Freida. Freida, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you very much. It's a big schus to be here tonight, albeit in a very sad time for our dear classmate. The Rebbe should be Menachem, her and the family. I don't have any words to say. Just heartbreaking, heartbreaking. That's all I could say. So it's a month of Shvat, and we are in the days between Yud Shevat, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, then we have Tu B'Shvat and Chav Shvat. So I want to start off with Tu B'Shvat and then connect it to Yud Shevat and Chav Shvat. So in 1963, in Eretz Yisrael, there was a archaeologist, Yigdal Yadin, and he did an archaeology dig in Masada. And he found something amazing. He found dried out palm date seeds, which he brought back to Bar Ilan University, and they stored it there. A few years later, there was a botanist, a scientist. Her name was Professor Levy. And she took these date seeds and she decided she was going to plant them. There was no hope that it would grow, but you never know. They were really uitgetrickend and verjavet. And so she went to Kibbutz Kiduri. Why? Because they dated these seeds, which was dated by the Churban Bayesheni around that time. And she wanted to recreate the climate and atmosphere where these seeds might have grown. So the kibbutz had the warmth and the nutrients and the water and so on. And a miracle happened. After many, many, many months, it sprouted. They couldn't believe it. And then it became a palm tree, a date tree. And they discovered it was a male. So it couldn't give off any fruit, any dates. And they named it Misushalach. Why Misushalach? Because in the Torah, he lived 969 years. He was the longest living person in the Torah. So Metsula, Metsula or Misushalach in Hebrew.
Methuselah.
Very good, Methuselah, whatever. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. No. I was looking for the right English name. And
okay.
They never thought that they would find a female date tree to pollinate so they could have actual dates. But another miracle happened. Many, many months later, they were doing another archaeological dig in Yerichai, in the Judean desert, and they found another group of uitgetrickende, verschimmelte date seeds that they dated 500 years before the original date seeds, Churban Bayis. And they figured out, they have these analysis that the seeds came from actually Persia, Iran, Iraq, where Esther and Mordechai were, Ezra, Nehemiah, and it was brought back to Yerichai, to Eretz Yisrael. So Professor Levy plants these seeds also in the Kibbutz Kiduri, and a miracle. This seeds are female and they grow into a tree. And she names this tree Chana, after the famous Chana, who was barren. She couldn't have children. So remember the story. She goes to Shiloh, she meets up with Eli, he accuses her of being drunk, and she ends up giving birth to the famous Shmuel Hanavi, Shmuel the prophet. So now you have Chana and Mesushalach. So they decide they're going to pollinate. They're going to take from Mesushalach. And lo and behold, another miracle happens. A long while later, the tree gives off dates. Not only dates, luscious, beautiful, delicious dates. It's on television and they take pictures. And they have a guy who comes and he makes quite a priya eitz and shechiyanu, and everyone tastes, and it's just a magnificent, magnificent date product, many dates. And if you look at the mefarshim that describe Eretz Zvas Chalav Udvash, a land of milk and honey, the Mefarshim actually say it's not honey from a bee, it's honey from a date. So the story of this Mesushalach and Chana is really the story of Klal Yisrael. It's the story of our history. Time and time again, the Yidden were, as we were called many times, oisgeklapta shyness. We were dried, we were fashimel, persecuted, pogroms, cremated, burnt, everything and anything. And time again, everyone thought the Jewish nation will never survive. We will never come back. Not only did we come back every time, but we bear fruits and we flourish and we grow and we more and more. And this ties in very much with Tu B'Shvat, because Tu B'Shvat, we always ask, why do we celebrate Tu B'Shvat in the winter when Tu B'Shvat, in the winter, you don't see any trees, you don't see any fruit, you don't see any flowers. So in Eretz Yisrael, you could say there's already buds, there's already some sign of life. But the answer is that most of the world is experiencing winter. But we learn, because when does the tree get its energy and its power to grow is in the winter months. It gets the snow and the rain and the nutrients from the wetness, and the roots are strengthened so that in the spring and the summer we have the beautiful trees and flowers and fruits and so on. And this is the story of Golus. We're in Golus, it's dark, it's cold, it's difficult, there are challenges, but it's these challenges and these struggles that strengthen us so that when the Geula comes, we will reap what we have sown from these winter and dark months. And so many times the Rebbe described that Yid, Falarin, his neshama, his Pintele Yid seems lost and buried, we can't find it. But when we find a Jew, maybe doesn't even know he's Jewish, and we give him warmth and love and embrace him and water him with Torah and mitzvahs, the seed comes alive. We suddenly have a beautiful tree, a beautiful Yid, a beautiful Jew reconnected to his roots and to his people or her people. And this is Tu B'Shvat. This is what Tu B'Shvat is. And it segues very beautifully into Yud Shevat. Yud Shevat, we all know, is first of all the day of the Stalkus of the Freida Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. And it is the day, albeit a year later, that the Rebbe assumed the leadership and the Nesius of Klal Yisrael. What is the hallmark of Yud Shevat? When you think of Yud Shevat, what do we think of? The famous Maimer, Bosi Legani Achoisi Kala, from Shir HaShirim, written by Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out Yud Shevat in memory of his beloved Baba Rebbetzin Rivka, the wife of the Rebbe Maharash, who he was very, very close to. So the reason he gave it out and he didn't say it is because we know the Frierdiker Rebbe had very difficulty speaking. So the Frierdiker Rebbe gives out this Maimer. What is this Maimer all about? It has 20 oisiyos, 20 stanzas. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, Basi Legani Achoisi Kala, and he quotes Medrash Rabbah. What is this saying? The Eibishter says, I have returned to my orchard, to my garden, to my sister, and to my bride. The Eibishter is saying, I have come back into this world, this beautiful orchard, and I have returned to Klal Yisrael. Sometimes we're called a sister, sometimes we're called a bride, different names that the Eibishter refers to us. And this is the Maimer. Now, where was the Eibishter? What did he returned? Did Eibishter leave the world? So the Frierdiker Rebbe explains that there were 7 transgressions, starting with the Chet Eitz Hadas, the sin of Adam and Chava eating from the tree of knowledge, and every one of the 7 transgressors pushed, metaphorically speaking, the Shechina up a level. up, till the Rebbe kind of went up 7 levels into the heavenly spheres. Again, metaphorically speaking. And then the 7 tzaddikim, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kahas, Amram, and the 7th, Moshe, slowly but surely brought the Shekhinah back into this world, into this orchard. When? With Moshe dedicating the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the desert after Matan Torah. Moshe Kol Shvi and Chavivin, as it says. So this is the theme of Basi Legani. This is the theme of Basi Legani. Now, after the Histalkus of the Freida Rebbe, the Rebbe every Yud Shevat expounded on one segment of the 20 of the Maimer. So over the years, the Rebbe did 20 segments and then another 20 segments over 40 years and explained and added onto this Maimer. And in one year, I think 1971, the Rebbe said something that was just, spectacular or extraordinary, exceptional. The Rebbe said, or asked, what was the last will and testament of the Freida Rebbe? Where is the tzava of the Freida Rebbe? And the Rebbe answered, in the Maimer Basi Legani, Achaisi Kala, is the Freida Rebbe's last will and testament. Now, why am I saying this is extraordinary? Because to understand why this is so extraordinary, you have to understand the Freida Rebbe's history. The Freida Rebbe assumed the Nesius in 1920 from his father, the Rebbe Rashab. Where? In Russia, under the brutality and the tyranny and the barbarism of Stalin, who didn't kill 1 million people. They said he killed 30 million people, 40 million people even. He was so paranoia, anyone he thought is going after him, he killed them. He killed so many people every day, like you and I drink a cup of coffee. And what did he do to Yidden? He sent them to Siberia and to the Gulag. Even the Freida Rebbe was put into prison and was tortured, was given a death sentence, and then it was commuted. And in spite of this horrific situation, the Freida Rebbe created 600 underground yeshivas and day schools, in cellars, on rooftops. 600. As a matter of fact, my own Zayda, Reb Simon Yakubashvili, was one of the 10 Chassidim who swore their allegiance to be shluchim in Russia and continue the work of the Freida Rebbe. And he was put into prison and tortured. He was one of the 10. And then what happens to the Freida Rebbe? He ends up in Warsaw. Who's there? Hitler Yamach Shemai. And again, the Freida Rebbe witnesses the horrific brutality and the murder of 6 million Yidden, 1 million children, his own daughter, Shana, his own son-in-law, murdered by the Nazis. And then he comes to America in the 1940s, right? And the Freida Rebbe is physically unwell. He's in a wheelchair. It's very hard for him to speak. His body is physically ravaged. And there was once a Heusbacher who, helped in the house of the Freida Rebbe. The Freida Rebbe lived upstairs, right, by 770. And he tells a story that after Yechidus one night, the Freida Rebbe comes upstairs and is sobbing. So Rebbe Tznecha says to him, what happened? And the Freida Rebbe says to her, Ich kann nicht mehr aushalten, die Tzores von die Jiddenvolk. I can't anymore take on the tzores, the problems of the Jews of the Yidden. I just can't anymore, says the Freida Rebbe. So now let's go back that the Rebbe said that the last will of testament of the Freida Rebbe is Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. What the Rebbe is saying, that how did the Freida Rebbe describe this world? He described this world like a magnificent orchard. Now I want you to imagine what an orchard is for a second. Think of yourself going to something magnificent. Like I remember when I visited Russia, the Winter Palace, the gardens there. It's not to be believed, the opulence of these gardens. So think of an orchard, you walk in and its magnificent fruits are growing. You could pluck a pear and you could sit on a bench and feel peaceful and serene, and the birds are twittering. An orchard is like something beautiful, serene, calm, peaceful. The Freida Hecht is calling the world an orchard. Look at his life. Compare it to Yirmiyahu Hanavi. By the Churban, by Rishon, the Rebbe still told Yirmiyahu, warn my people that there'll be destruction if they don't do tshuva, and they don't do tshuva. And Yirmiyahu sees the Churban in flames. And he calls out and he says and he cries. Ani hagever roya ani, he says, I have witnessed the blood of the Yidden flowing in the streets of Yerushalayim like a river. And he writes Eicha, and he cries and cries and cries and continues to cry. The whole Eicha is crying. And the Freida Rebbe, who went through and witnessed, the Freida Rebbe didn't read about brutality, didn't hear about brutality, didn't see the horrific things that Am Yisrael suffered. He experienced it. And the Rebbe says, what is his last will and testament to us? Remember that Eibishter is in this world, and the world is a beautiful, magnificent orchard. And he gave us our mission statement, our purpose, our shlichus, our marching orders, that we have to take this orchard, this magnificent, beautiful world, and embrace it, rejuvenate it, transform it, beautify it, take care of it, and not allow it to fall to ruin. That's our shlichus. And the question we all have to ask ourselves before Yud Shevat is, how are we going to view our shlichus, even after October 7th? Are we going to view our shlichus and perception of the world like Eicha? Or are we going to look at the world like Shir HaShirim, Bossi Lagani? And I want to be bold to say that if the mission statement of the Freida Rebbe and that Tzavah to us is Bossi Lagani, and the Rebbe took on this mimer and expounded on it, then that's the Rebbe's Tzavah to us as well. We have to say it's the Rebbe's last will and testament to us too, that this is our shlichus in the world. In 1961, a young woman writes a letter to the Rebbe. And she writes, my life is so bleak. I'm so unhappy. I don't see a purpose. I have a mission in my life. It's just, I'm so depressed. I don't know what to do, she writes to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe responds to her, again, in such a, I can't say extraordinary response. The Rebbe says to her, I want to contrast two moments in history for you. One is Adam. Adam is created, he's put into a magnificent orchard, Gan Eden. And the Rebbe just says to Adam, you can eat from anything in the garden, but not from the Eitz Hadas. That's the only tree you can't eat from. And what happens? Adam eats from the Eitz Hadas. He eats from the Eitz Hadas. And the Rebbe comes to him and says, from the one tree I told you not to eat from, you had to eat from? The one tree? So what does Adam answer? The Rebbe, Ha'isha Shenosati. My wife. She's the one who gave me the fruit. It's her fault. As a matter of fact, Abish, it's your fault. You gave me this Isha, so it's your fault. You gave me this Isha, so that's why I ate from the tree of knowledge. What did you expect? It's your fault. You gave me this wife. And Rashi says on this, Kaifer B'toiv, he was ungrateful. He lacked gratitude. He had everything going for him. No mortgage payments. He didn't have to pay utilities. No schar limud. He didn't have to worry about food on his table. No medical bills. And when the Rebbe asked him, why did you eat from the Eitz Hadas? He says, my wife. And you gave me my wife. So Rebbe, really, it's all your fault. No gratitude. And the Rebbe says, now contrast this with a Yid that was put into the concentration camps. His family killed in front of his eyes. His dignity, his respect, his life, everything taken away from him. And he wakes up in the morning. And what does he do? He says, Birchas HaShachar, the morning blessings. And people ask him, why are you saying Birchas HaShachar? What are you grateful for in this place? He says, what am I grateful for? I woke up this morning that Abisha gave me another day to live. I'm alive today. And for this I say, Moida ani lifonecha. So the Rebbe writes, you see, it's not about circumstance, it's about attitude. You could be in paradise and say, Ha'isha nosati. You see, it's all your fault. And you could be in a concentration camp and wake up and say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. You gave me my life, my day, another day to live. And the Rebbe said, most of us don't live in paradise. And most of us, thank God, chas v'sholom, are not in a concentration camp. We're somewhere in between. And the Rebbe concludes, so you see, it's all about your attitude, not your circumstance. So when the Rebbe said that the tzava of the Freida Rebbe is that we have to look at the world as a magnificent orchard, and our job is to clear out the weeds and the thorns and the brambles and the brush and make sure that this orchard is beautiful and rejuvenated. That is our shlichus. That is what the Freida Rebbe gave us and continued by the Rebbe. And there's another magnificent thing that the Freida Rebbe gave us. When the Freida Rebbe said that maimer, gave up that maimer, he gave us in that maimer the instructions that the Rebbe would be his successor, even though the Rebbe did not want to take on the Messias. Now we know that there is many mefarshim and medrashim on Shir Hashirim and this pasuk Basi Lagani Achaisi Kala. But the Freida Rebbe chose the Medrash Rabbah. Why? Basi Lagani Achaisi Kala. Ligani Lignuni. Lemakaim Shahya Ikri. To the place that my Shechina was before. By the word Makaim, the Freida Rebbe says Medrash Rabbah. And then he quotes Medrash Rabbah. Omar Reb Menachem. Chasmai. Omar Reb Menachem, the Rebbe, Chosen Nasi Hadar, my son-in-law, the Nasi Hadar. So this maimer is not only the tzava and the mission statement, it's the instructions of who will succeed and who will be the next Nasi Hadar. My son-in-law, Nasi Hadar. a Medrash Rabbah. And by the way, it's not the only place. There are many stories of how it was predestined that the Rebbe be the successor of the Frierdiker Rebbe. There's many stories, and it all started, even the Alter Rebbe said that the Rebbe would be the Nasi after the Frierdiker Rebbe. I'm going to share a story that happened when the Rebbe Rashab, the Mittler Rebbe was Rebbe in Russia. His son-in-law, the Tzemach Tzedek, had a chavrusa, a goyin benigla that he wrote svarim. His name was Nechemia Dubrovna. And of course, Nechemia Dubrovna was a chassid also of the Mittler Rebbe. Now, when the Mittler Rebbe was nostalgic, the Tzemach Tzedek assumed the Nesius in Lubavitch. But Nechemia Dubrovna, because the Tzemach Tzedek was his chavrusa and his friend, he couldn't bring himself to go to Lubavitch and accept the Tzemach Tzedek as his Rebbe. And one night he goes to sleep, and the Alter Rebbe comes to him in a dream. He says, Nechemia, was hast du nicht der Rebbe? So in the dream, he says to the Alter Rebbe, but the Rebbe is nostalgic geworden. The Mittler Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe says to him, Du hast a Rebbe in Lubavitch, in Lubavitch. You have a Rebbe in Lubavitch, go to Lubavitch. And then the Alter Rebbe says to him these special words. He says, Menachem Hoive or Menachem Osid. Now you have a Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Alter Rebbe says, and in the future, Menachem Osid, there will be another Menachem Rebbe. So when the Rebbe, Yud Shevat, the Rebbe did not want to take on the Nesius, there was a chassid, Meir Ashkenazi, who came to New York. Now, how do we know the story? The story was told, and the Frierdiker Rebbe said it in a sicha or wrote it in a sicha. So Meir Ashkenazi took the sicha and he comes to the Rebbe and he hands the Rebbe the sicha to show him that the Alter Rebbe said, Menachem la'asid, that you have to take the Nesias. He gives the Rebbe the sicha. And there's one more beautiful story. I read a few stories, but these two really resonated. There was already, the Rebbe Rashab said, as Reb Leivik Zun wird meshadach sein mit the Frierdiker Rebbe's a Tochter. It was already predestined. So Rebbe Tzimchana, the Rebbe's mother, came to Rostov. And she stayed by the Frierdiker Rebbe. Why? To make chakira, to meet Rebbe Tzimchai Mushka and see, is this a proper shidduch for her son? So she comes to the house, and she's very impressed with the Rebbetzin, of course, and she's very impressed with the home and the Chassidishkeit. So she goes into the Frierdiker Rebbe for Yechidus, and she says to the Frierdiker Rebbe, in the name of her husband, Reb Leivik, the man und ich seinen Maskim of the Shidduch. We agree on the Shidduch. We would like to go ahead. So the Frierdiker Rebbe is very pleased. Okay, sehr gut. She says, but the Reb Leivik had gemeint a Naden. Reb Leivik said, we want a dowry. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, aber ich habe nicht kein Geld. I have no money. So Rebbe Tzimchana said, nicht as a Naden willen mir. Wir willen der Rebista. Not such a dowry of money. We want a dowry that our son should be the successor of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, ich bin maskin. So Rebbe Tzimchana says, we have to write this down on paper. We have to put it down, contract. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, bei mir, bei uns, is a Wort a Wort. By us, our word is our word. That's how it is. Another person said that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, the Chassidim wollen schon wissen. The Chassidim will already know. But in any case, so now Zalman Gerari and Sender Reinen to Chassidim, they were Bachrim, and the story circulated in Rostov. So Yud Shevat, Shnei Zalman Gerari goes to the Rebbe and says, your mother arranged it. Your mother made a contract with the Frierdiker Rebbe that you're going to be the successor. And Sender Reinen did the same thing. He also went to the Rebbe and said, we were there. We know, we're witnesses. So what's the Rebbe's response? Aber der Rebbe, der Schwer, hat mir gar nicht gesagt. He says, the Rebbe didn't tell me. Which we know that the Rebbe very much did not want the public persona being a Rebbe. The Rebbe was an introvert, a very private person. And the Rebbetzin was the same way. Talking about Chav Bei Shvat, the Rebbetzin was in New York, and she had two childhood friends, the Morozov sisters, who lived in Israel. And one of the Morozov sisters came to New York, and of course paid a visit to the Rebbetzin. It was her childhood friend, and they chatted. And the Rebbetzin said to her, "Du gedenkst, dass man gerät, wenn wir seine Gewinn Mädlach." You remember what we spoke about when we were children together? And Mrs. Morozov said, no. But when she left, she told her family that she did remember. She just didn't want to tell the Rebbetzin that she remembered. What were the two things that the Rebbetzin and her discussed when they were girls? The Rebbetzin confided in her and said, the Frierdiker Rebbe hat nur Töchter. My father, the Rebbe, only has daughters. Who is going to be the successor? And the second thing she said, I never want to be married to a Rebbe, she said. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because we know that one of the main reasons the Rebbe took on the Nesius was because the Rebbetzin said to the Rebbe, if you don't take on the Nesius, that all the work my father did will be for naught. There's been no continuity. You have to take it on. Not for your own sake, but for my father's sake. So look, she said, I don't want to be the wife of a Rebbe. But yet she knew that she had to convince the Rebbe to take on the Nesius. So this is who the Rebbetzin really was behind the scenes. So I want to end off with a story that happened to my husband's grandfather, Freida Hecht. He's the father of all the Hecht brothers, JJ and Peretz and Moshe. And that's why there's all so many Shias. They're all named after him. So he was very, very ill. This was after Yud Shevat. So he wrote a pan, and he came to 770 to give his pan. And Rabbi Groner was there, and he told my father-in-law the story. So he comes to the Rebbe, and he tells the Rebbe, Chaba pan, I'm very not well. So the Rebbe said, don't worry, I'll take you upstairs. This was after the Stalkus, to the Frierdiker Rebbe's cheder, and you'll put your pan there auf dem Tisch for the Rebbe the Schwer. So Zaidi Shia says to the Rebbe, nein, I'm sorry. Ich darf haben a lebendiger Rebbe. I need a living Rebbe. So the Rebbe looks at him and he says, Eba ze gibaher. If so, give me your pan. And he gave the Rebbe his pan. And the Rebbe took his pan. So I want to be as bold as to say that in these times, these unprecedented times, October 7th, and now with our friend, we have to call out to the Rebishter. We go to the oil, we write to the Igros, we've seen Nissim and Efloyas. There's no doubt about it. Every day we hear Nissim from the oil and Nissim from the Igros, more than ever. But I want to say to the Rebishter, Mirvilin Alebedike Rebbe, I'm sorry. It's time that we should already have Gilui Mashiach. We should have the Bossi Legani, the orchard revealed. We should see the revelation of the orchard in the way it's meant to be, full of fruit and light, the way the Frierdiker Rebbe envisioned it and gave us the vision of what the world should be and could be. And this will be with the coming of Mashiach, the Gula Amitas HaYishlemus Al Yidei Mashiach Tzidkenu Mitoich HaNira HaNigla L'Matav HaSar Tzvachim. Every one of the brachas Mashiach now.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Freida, that was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Job.